Welcome to a special deep dive. Today, we're putting our usual stack of sources aside for a really focused exploration into the history and the very foundations of the rescue mission movement.
Hmm.
This one is especially for those of you who are, just joining the vital work at a rescue mission. Think of this as your express pass to understanding the rich story you're now a part of.
That's right. And we've compiled a really compelling set of materials to help us. We're looking at historical overviews straight from the websites of loads of rescue missions, places like Rescue Mission Alliance, St. Matthew's House, Westminster Rescue Mission, Gateway Mission, just so many.
Okay.
And we also have academic research that digs into the origins, the impact.
Yeah.
Titles like Enacted Christianity, Salvation in the Slums.
Right.
Plus, we've got the historical perspective from City Vision University, which is, deeply connected to rescue missions, and even some YouTube transcripts,
Yeah.
sort of firsthand accounts.
Okay, great. So let's unpack this. Our goal today is to really get to the heart of, well, a few key questions. Like, where did this whole idea of a rescue mission even start?
Yeah.
Who were the pivotal figures, the organizations that shaped its early growth? What are the core biblical principles guiding this work? What's distinctive about how rescue missions approach things, their values, and, ultimately, what kind of difference have they actually made?
Right. And to understand where it all started, we really need to go back to the
Yeah.
mid-19th century in America. Cities were booming, expanding rapidly.
Hmm.
And with that came these really complex issues around poverty. It got harder, to tell the difference between genuine hardship and struggles maybe linked to what they often called vice. Intemperance, alcohol use was a huge concern back then.
Okay, so that's the setting. And here's where it gets really interesting, right? It's in that environment, 1872, that America's very first Gospel Rescue Mission gets established,
Yeah,
New York City.
that's the one.
And what strikes me is right from the get-go, these missions weren't just about like handing out a meal or a bed. They paired that immediate practical help with daily gospel preaching.
Every day.
It suggests this fundamental belief, doesn't it? That lasting change meant tackling both the physical and the spiritual stuff. What does that initial dual focus tell us?
Well, it's absolutely key. It wasn't just about easing suffering right then and there. It was about offering a path, a whole transformed life rooted in faith. And clearly, that model, it really resonated.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because we saw dozens, literally dozens of similar missions popping up pretty quickly all across the U.S. This was the start of something genuinely new, a distinct form of ministry.
And then to kind of bring some order or connection to this growing movement, the International Union of Gospel Missions, IUGM, was formed in 1913.
Right, though originally it was the National Federation of Gospel Missions.
Ah,
Oh.
okay. And its creation, that's largely down to Sidney Whitmore.
Sidney Whitmore, yeah. He's credited as the father of the IUGM,
Right.
really bringing them together, providing connection, some accountability too.
Okay. Now let's really bring this history to life. Let's talk about some of the key people, the early missions. And you can't really start anywhere else but with Jerry McAuley, can you?
No, absolutely not. He's such a central figure, an Irish immigrant, knew deep poverty, had a criminal past. I mean, really rough beginnings.
Right.
And his conversion story is just dramatic. In Sing Sing prison, hearing a message from Orville Gardner, a former partner in crime who'd become a preacher.
Wow. That's incredible.
It really highlights that core belief, doesn't it? The
Yeah.
power of faith to actually tangibly change lives, even lives that seemed completely lost.
It's an amazing testament to that. And his transformation wasn't just about him, was it? He married Maria Fahey.
Yes, who had her own difficult past as a prostitute.
Right. And as she saw the change in Jerry, her own faith grew.
Exactly.
Mm.
And then, with just $450 raised at a gospel camp meeting, plus some crucial support from a guy named Al Frederick Hatch, they opened Helping Hand for Men, October 1872, 316 Water Street.
And the location itself is so significant, isn't it? A former bar and brothel, right in the thick of it.
Right in the heart of the slums. And what really made Macaulay's mission stand out was this just unconditional love and acceptance they showed everyone. Didn't matter how down and out you were.
And that led to results.
Countless conversions, the sources say. They later opened the Cremorne mission too. Sadly, Jerry's life was cut short, 1884. Tuberculosis he'd contracted in prison.
Oh, wow.
But his funeral was huge, a massive public event. People recognized him, as the evangelist of the slums, a real pioneer.
And Macaulay's influence it didn't just stop with his own work. You see this ripple effect, like with Samuel Hadley.
Ah, yes, Samuel Hadley. His own conversion was sparked by his brother, and then he goes on to encourage his unsaved brother, Colonel Henry H. Hadley.
Colonel Hadley. He'd struggled with alcoholism for years.
Terribly. Yeah. But he also had this dramatic conversion experience. And get this, he went on to start 60 other rescue missions.
60. That's incredible. It really shows how one changed life can just ignite something huge.
Absolutely. And the reach extended, didn't it, to some really vulnerable groups, like women in desperate situations. Charles Crittenden.
His story is so moving, losing his daughter, Florence.
Yes, and that grief fueled this passion to rescue women involved in prostitution. There was a key planning meeting with John Dooley, Samuel H. Hadley, Henry Burton Gibbard that led to the Florence mission.
Which became the Florence Crittenden Homes, right? Providing refuge, support.
Vital work. And then there's Emma Whitmore and the Door of Hope.
She knew the Macaulays well.
Yes. She was friends with Jerry and Maria, learned from their compassion firsthand. She started sharing her own story, became a mission worker, and eventually founded the Door of Hope Homes, specifically for women.
And that grew significantly, too.
Immensely. By the time she died, 97 Door of Hopes globally. It grew to around 250, and many of those actually became gospel rescue missions themselves.
It's just so inspiring how central women were, right from these early days.
Definitely. And the movement kept finding champions. Mel Trotter, for instance, called to Grand Rapids in 1900.
By city leaders, looking for help.
Exactly. They had seen the impact of Pacific Garden Rescue Mission in Chicago and wanted something similar. So Trotter established City Rescue Mission there, now Mel Trotter Ministries.
Okay.
He got ordained in 1905. The mission moved into the old Smith Opera House in 1906. Quite a presence. He even ministered to soldiers during World War I.
And another key woman we should mention is Clem Ellis White.
Oh, absolutely. Started Door of Hope, but then gave up plans for a medical career, believe it or not, to take charge of the Westside Gospel Mission.
Wow. She was known for street meetings.
Very effective open-air meetings. And she was crucial in stabilizing the IUGM, the only woman on its executive committee for 30 years.
30 years? That's amazing.
And she wrote this tract, The Rescue Mission, which really helped define what these places were all about, foundational stuff.
So it's important for you, our listeners, to know these names: Macaulay, Hadley, Crittenden, Whitmore, Trotter, White, but also that there were many other early missions making a huge difference.
Definitely. Places like Pacific Garden Mission, where Cliff Phillips later worked before founding Fresno Mission, Howard Mission, where Henry Little first pointed Macaulay towards ministry, Bethesda Mission, known early for its integrated approach.
City Gospel Mission too, right? Back in 1872.
Yes, and notable for Marguerite pioneering women's rights within the mission. And Union Rescue Mission, founded 1891 by Lyman Stewart, the head of Union Oil Company.
No kidding.
Yeah, initially called Pacific Gospel Union, but always with that clear focus on both physical and spiritual needs. So we had this picture of where it all began. What were the core beliefs driving them? What scriptures, what theology?
That's a great question. And it seems, well, absolutely central was this mission to declare and demonstrate the love of Christ. You hear that phrase or variations of it again and again. Gateway mission, declare and demonstrate the love of Christ. Beacon of hope, shelter, bringing lasting hope through the gospel of Jesus Christ. Buffalo City Mission, meeting spiritual and practical needs through Christ's love and gospel preaching. It's right there.
It really is. And there's that fascinating idea in some sources like enacted Christianity, suggesting the poor are like a point of connection between God and the world.
Referencing Mark 10.29, the first being last, the last first.
Yeah, that powerful reversal. It's a deep theological perspective underpinning the work.
And there also seems to be this strong influence from Wesleyan holiness. You mentioned that earlier. Could you unpack that a bit? How did that shape the approach?
Sure. Wesleyan holiness was a major theological stream in the 19th century. It really emphasized personal conversion, yes, but also this commitment to living a holy life. And often that translated directly into social action, social reform. So you see it reflected in the missions. Individual conversion plus tackling social problems. The idea that every believer has a calling, a discipleship, lifelong service. Being in the world, but not of it.
Right.
And being concerned with, well, moral and social functioning. Removing that stigma of defeat for the people they served, teaching practical daily living skills. It's very hands-on.
It's interesting, though. How did that approach sit with maybe secular criticisms? You know, the idea that charity just makes poverty bearable but doesn't change the system.
Yeah, that's a tension. The sources suggest that missions prioritized reconciliation, maybe not the overt political activism some others did,
Right.
but their focus on spiritual transformation,
Yeah.
that was seen as the fundamental lasting change.
So changing hearts was changing society in their view.
Exactly. By addressing the deepest needs, the heart needs, through the gospel, they believed they were enacting the most profound, the most enduring social change possible.
And that holistic approach dealing with the immediate and the deeper stuff seems like a real hallmark. Not just food and shelter, though. Places like Santa Barbara Rescue Mission, Union Rescue Mission did that from day one.
Crucial, immediate needs. Yeah.
But also this strong emphasis on longer-term things. Recovery programs, discipleship, counseling, job skills, life skills, like at Buffalo City Mission or Fresno Missions Academy, Agape Houses Pathway to Independence.
Precisely. And right at the core of that whole model is spiritual transformation. It's Christ-centered, spirit-led change, like Gateway Mission puts it.
Seeing lives redeemed, restored through God's grace, that's Bethesda Mission's focus.
Right. And one source even says, the gospel they share isn't just about getting off drugs or getting a job. Important as those are, it's about a fundamental life change that leads ultimately to a home in heaven.
The funding model also seems pretty distinct for many missions.
Often, yes. Relying heavily on donations, individuals, churches, businesses, and frequently, intentionally avoiding government funds. Beacon of Hope Shelter mentions this, wanting to maintain their specific mission focus.
And there's a strong commitment to accountability, too, isn't there? Financial integrity.
Very much so. The Rescue Mission Alliance, for example, adhering to standards from groups like the ECFA, the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability, and Charity Navigator. These are independent watchdogs, basically, setting standards for nonprofits.
And we shouldn't forget the faith factor itself.
Yeah, good point. There's research mentioned in Street Saints suggesting that religious involvement actually correlates with reduced substance abuse, lower suicide risk, tangible impacts.
So ultimately, it's about instilling hope, right? Renewed purpose, helping people find God's love and build a life with dignity.
That's the goal. That's what drives it.
So looking back at all this history, this unique approach, what's the verdict? What's the overall impact been? What difference have rescue missions made?
Oh, the impact's been huge.
Mm-hmm.
Really profound, far-reaching. You have just countless stories of individuals finding faith through ministries like Macaulay's.
Mm-hmm.
And missions have absolutely been instrumental in breaking cycles. Addiction, poverty, homelessness, for so many people, so many families. Places like Santa Barbara Rescue Mission, Union Rescue Mission, they highlight this ongoing impact.
And it's clear the movement hasn't just, stayed stuck in the 19th century. It's adapted.
Constantly. Missions today offer really specialized programs. You see specific programs for women and children like Mel Trotter Ministries, buying a women and children's shelter, or Buffalo City Mission's Cornerstone Manor.
Family shelters, too, like at Fresno Mission.
Exactly. Specialized recovery programs like Justin's Place at St. Matthew's House, and even educational partnerships. City Vision University is a prime example.
Right. Founded as the education arm of AGRMIUGM, now Citygate Network.
Yeah. Providing practical Christian education specifically for things like addiction counseling, nonprofit management. So many missions send students, have faculty involved. It's a close relationship.
And community seems vital, too. Creating spaces for transformation, community meals, the huge role of volunteers.
Oh, volunteers are the lifeblood for so many.
And partnerships, right, working with other local groups.
Absolutely. Like Fresno Mission Safe Area with the police,
Right.
or Partnering for Literacy, GED classes. And in that mentorship model you mentioned earlier.
The I've been there model.
Yeah. Highlighted by Beacon of Hope. People who've walked that road themselves, offering guidance, hope. It's incredibly powerful. And despite needs becoming maybe even more complex today, the core mission endures, bringing help and hope to people experiencing homelessness, driven by compassion, driven by that desire to see lives redeemed.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the history, the foundations, what are the key things you'd want someone new to this work, listening right now, to really take away?
Okay. Well, first, know that this movement has incredibly deep roots. It grew out of this compassionate response to really complex problems. Second, it's characterized by that holistic approach, meeting immediate needs and addressing the deeper spiritual, moral dimensions.
Right.
Third, the stories of the founders, their faith, their resilience, their commitment. It's just an incredibly powerful legacy for you to connect with. Fourth, that strong biblical foundation. It still informs the unique values and methods today. And finally, the impact is real. It's ongoing. on countless lives, countless communities.
And for you, our new colleagues listening in, you are now part of this long, incredibly meaningful story, serving those in need with Christ's love, offering not just, temporary help, but the real possibility of lasting hope, genuine transformation.
Yeah. Which leads to a really important thought, maybe something for you to consider as you start your journey. How can those enduring principles, that passionate spirit of the early pioneers, how can that continue to inspire your daily work? As you face the challenges of today, you are now part of this powerful legacy. How will you add to its story?